Good morning, good day, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. How are you all doing today? I always sound like I'm, but hey, no doom and gloom. It's March the 8th, Women's International Day. I've heard some women say, well, what's that? I celebrate Women's Day every day. Well, bully for you. Just like how it can be Valentine's Day, Mother's Day, Father's Day. Let's just have a day. It's Women's Day. My podcast today is, again, I always seem to have a double subject, but I'm going to literally, my daily blog, rather than an instance of people I've spoken to, is again an insight to standing in my truth of me. Where would we be without our parents, without our mothers? I'm not saying that the sperm of our fathers is not relevant, because the mother could not have you without the sperm that germinates the womb to create the people we are today. Doesn't matter the gender, the bias that you change and you feel that when you were growing up, you didn't feel like a girl, you felt like a boy. Doesn't matter if you felt like a boy and you felt like a girl and you want to change. It all stems down to that we have a mother. It doesn't matter if your mother is still alive. It doesn't matter if she's dead. We all had a mother. Doesn't matter if you were a sperm in a bank and you were put into another woman as a surrogate. Doesn't matter, we all had a mother. So that's why I'm saying this podcast is a jewel, because it is International Women's Day. And then the 14th of March is Mother's Day. So hail up, hail up, hail up. International Women's Day and Mother's Day. I find it, I'm a parent, I'm a mother. And, doing a podcast is easy for me to talk about everything else. And sometimes I lie to myself, because where I am so shielded about who I am as an individual, how much do I share about myself, determines of what sometimes comes out in my podcast. Funny that, eh? The title says Standing in My Truth. I'm beginning to like the podcast, because I'm still trying to find out, what am I trying to say? There's so many people out there doing different various podcasts. But let me rein it back in. I'm a mother, and I have a beautiful daughter. I have a mother who has 2 beautiful daughters. She's a queen. But it was not always sweetness and light between my mother and I. Because parts of me resented my mother for separating me from my brothers and sisters when I was growing up. If you listened to the podcast before, I was so angry of the killings of the youths, prior to this podcast, you would have learnt that my formative years, I lived in Jamaica. Born in England, taken away from an early age, brought up in Jamaica. And sometimes I have conversations with various people from walks of life, and when I look at their lifestyle and I look at mine, I'm actually grateful that I had the chance to see life from at the time it was third world in my eyes. The primitive lifestyle of not having everything, but people coped with everything and anything, to the life of living in the UK where there's everything. But I resented my mother, loved my grandmother more than I think I loved my mother. My grandmother felt like the one that had my back. She wanted good for me. She tried to instill good in me. Right, no matter how archaic her views on life were about women and growing up. God rest her soul. But I watched my grandmother being bullied. I watched my grandmother being vilified by her own siblings. My grandmother was feisty. She took no crap from nobody. But she was her own woman. I watched my grandmother live apart from her husband because it was how it was done back in those days, where, your husband's in another country and you're here, or, one husband is working certain hours, so to put food on the table. So she was home alone. She was a staunch Christian woman. Staunch. Took me to church from the day I could remember. Not my mother. My mother worked 24/7 as a nurse. So I saw my grandmother more than I saw my mother. They say the apple never falls far from the tree. And I always thought that I took my grandmother's traits. But in fact, I took my mother's traits, even though I wasn't around her. Because my grandmother's traits were my mother's traits, which now became my traits. And I've been trying to fight to break that cycle of the traits. But I fell foul, partly, some of it. I think that's probably what's geared my nature as a good time girl. I like to go out. I like to have fun. I like to, literally have music, party, anything that I can just go, wow. Because there's so much things playing up in that mind of mine. I want to do. I don't want to fail. I don't want to drop. I want to create. But if I had to look at myself back through my mother and my grandmother, I think I'm doing what they would have loved to have done. My mum was a happy-go-lucky woman, married, 5 kids, just a beautiful woman. Who would have thought that in her later years she'd be bedridden for almost 8 years and counting. People have lost their parents through lesser, and my mother is still here, even though given no life, just nothing. I mean, nothing. Bedridden with amyloidosis, kidney cancer. That's enough of what she has. I'm not looking sympathy. Traumatic. I sometimes beat myself up because I don't fully care for my mother. My brother does. And sometimes I say to myself, is it because I wasn't cared for my mum why I don't give the full 100% care and give up everything and be the carer? Because she's in between a home and a palliative care and in her own home. What is it? But that's another story. My grandmother, the woman I call mother, as I said, her views on being a woman is still instilled in me today. And parts of it probably played havoc in terms of how my relationship should be with a man. And how I value my loyalty if I'm in a relationship with a man. You see, because what a man sees outside of me It's never going to be the deepness of me. They will just see the sexuality of me. They will never see between the eyes, which is the tunnel into my soul, which is a deep-rooted woman of substance. But they always say, what you put out is what people will always perceive you to be. You could always look like sweetness and light. I have no time to look like sweetness and light. I speak my mind. Now, for years I didn't, but social media has a way of, sometimes I just cannot help myself. Hence, I've got a podcast. And I would love to have had this podcast where it was two people having a conversation, but I've just got it, which is going to happen eventually. But for now, these are the daily blogs standing in my truth of where and how life is from looking through my eyes. And I know there's people out there that can relate to what I'm talking about, because I'm having those conversations on a regular basis. For the first time through lockdown, I have capitalized and, why can I not get the word out? Encapsulate the wonderful conversations of people around me. I'm not trying to out them. I'm just saying the conversations I am growing into has been tremendous, because it's allowing me to learn who myself is as a woman, which I always knew who I was. I just got myself caught up with other people that was allowing me to be dragged down and doubting my conscious level. And once I woke up to understand that, why should I be someone else but nothing but myself? Nothing but myself matters. That goes for everybody. So I didn't have the greatest relationship with my mother. Even though she's my everything, there was times that the way that my mother portrayed herself to me was heartbreaking. I used to go out and rave 24/7. Those who knows me well would know I used to be a party girl. And this is before I got into the music industry. I used to party till the sun came up. And when the sun went down, I'm still partying. Having a time of my life. I met the most amazing people. But I'm going to digress a little bit, which is another thing. So when I got into the music industry, I literally left my whole life behind. The life that I grew up with, I left it behind, because the music industry was something completely different. You're touring and you're constantly touring. You're on the road 24/7. You completely forget the life that you're accustomed to. Just completely forget. Actually, as a matter of fact, I don't forget. I try to keep in touch. I will send messages, to my friends, my dear, beautiful friends like Bernie and Jackie and Diane and Josie. Those are the crux of my friends. I still maintain those friends to this day. And I've gathered other friends in the process, but those are my nucleus of friends. And even though I don't see them, but anyway. So I used to always go out. And I never forget once I came to my mum's, as some of us women used to do, right? And go to my mum's house. And I sneak in the kitchen. She's come home from work. She's working the night shift. And it's like she knew that I'd crept in through the door. And I never forget one day she turned around and she said, "If that's Valerie downstairs, take your filthy hands off my pot." To this day, that resonated. My mother was so upset that I was going out and having a good time that I wasn't allowed to eat from her pot. And that day, I said to myself, I will never, ever ask you for anything. And that's just how I am. I don't ask for anything. And even though I know I should, and even though I need help, I'd rather fall on my sword than ask and take the help. I mean, now I am learning that, if someone offers, you don't need to offer them money or give them a drink or, some people don't want anything. They genuinely just want to help you. Anyway, from the time my mother said that to me, I knew I would never ask again. I would never pander to you again. The way I saw it is this: you palmed me off from an early age with my grandmother. You threw me to a country that I had no connection to. I knew nobody. And you left me there for 4 and 5 years. Didn't see you and none. I don't think I remember talking to you. But you used to send gifts. You would send everything. You palmed me off and you took care of the other 4 children that you had back in the UK. You abandoned me. Abandonment still sits with me to this day. I will never abandon my daughter. Through the music, it felt like I abandoned her because there was times I just wasn't here. And my husband at the time, yes, I was married before, believe it or not. He held the balance whilst I could travel. So I'm always grateful to him because we're divorced now. So I'm grateful to him. But I felt abandoned. Abandonment has always stayed with me. So for me, watching my, grandmother bring me up, I've taken my grandmother, values, but then I had to live in a home where her marriage wasn't that great. To the bitter end, my grandmother and grandfather stayed right to the end. But little did I know that I met another man who's my grandfather. Come on, I'm like 9, 10 years old. How mixed up can my family be? And there's this man standing in front of me. This is when I first got to Jamaica. He's Chinese. He's got the most weirdest, kinky, straightish hair. And his name is a Maxfield. But the family name is Chong. Ching and Chong. And he takes me, this is where my history, oh my God. I'm writing a book, so I don't want to give away too much. But the fact that this man said, I'm your grandfather. And I looked at my grandmother like, huh? But I got my granddad. He's in England. What's going on here? Hello? The confusion. Because black people or the Caribbean people don't talk. And it still goes on today. They hide embarrassments. Because what happens sometimes when people die, that's when the story comes out that woman over there is your cousin, your uncle, your daughter, your uncle, sister, brother. It's just madness. To me, some parts of it can be classed as incestuous. And I think that's when I had issues of dating. Because deep down inside, I knew something wasn't right. I knew something wasn't right with my mother and why I was separated. Only for me to get into my early 30s to find out that the man who's cared for me treated me like I am the salt of the earth, and he just gave me everything I wanted, was not my father. And the fact that when I came back, I know I've skipped the story a bit, and the fact that when I did come back to the UK, I ended up going to school with my sister, with my half-sister, for this sperm donor who hated the ground I walked on. She didn't know who I was. I didn't know who she was. Remember, I don't know anything. But something told me, there's something about you I'm not sure about and I don't like you. My 6th Scorpio sense kicked in. I don't know what it is. And she had a brother that used to come. I went to old girls' school, convent school, and, you know, there was this guy, and all the girls used to love this guy. I can't call his name. And everybody, but I looked at him and I thought, God, you make me feel sick. And he used to send messages to say, yeah, I fancy her, I like her, ooh, she's different, blah, 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 blah. Only to find out, Jesus Christ, 15 years later, this guy is my half-brother. Just thinking about it, I absolutely just want to puke. Could you imagine if I had looked in that guy's direction just once to think I could have fancied him? I probably would have committed suicide by now. Because the thought, I'm sorry, I don't care about anybody who wants to go out with their cousins and blah, blah. That's your prerogative, right? Not me. Not me. This guy hung out over at my school. Turns out to be my half-brother. Now, you must be wondering, do I hang around all of them? That's a whole different story. That it's so mixed up. It's so mixed up, and imagine it. Oh God, it really is that mixed up. To know that same whole family, he had children, his kids knew another set of family that didn't like me, used to try to bully me, you know. These people used to try to bully me in school. And I think one day for the first time, I spoke up and they never bothered me again. And I remember literally just standing up to everybody, these bullies, and saying, listen, you don't know me. So when you're throwing your words, try and remember, you put me down, I'm taking you down with me. And that's me using those words very kindly, very nicely, because it wasn't like that. I didn't believe in violence. I watched violence growing up. It's not in my makeup, but I'm angry enough to use my mouth to take you down. I don't need to use my fist. And if it came to that, I will use my fist. Because I'm protecting me. Because growing up, I had no one to protect me. There was no mother. There was no father. They were all in bloody England. So I grew up tough. I grew up with my grandmother. My grandfather threw money at me. They were rich. They had money in Jamaica. They had bakeries. Took me up into the hills of Linstead. Found a whole congregation of Chinese Rasta men. I haven't seen that family in years. I don't think they even know where I am. Once I left Jamaica to come back to England, I scrubbed it. I heard that my grandfather died. I didn't get to go back for his funeral. And with that, parts of my family, that side of my grandfather, my blood grandfather, died. I've never gone back and traced my heritage. When my grandmother died, I did not even trace that heritage. I don't think my 4, God rest my soul, my brother died, but my other 3 siblings, I don't think they even know the story, because I am doing exactly what my mom and my grandmother's done, is shut up and not speak the story, tell the story. That means another heritage of our lineage has just died. We've not kept it going. My family's so integrated that we have now got Italians to Guyanese to Indians, you name it. It is so integrated. And these children that are now growing up will not know the other Panamanian and the Chinese side of the family of us because of the women in my family. Why they felt it was taboo to let us know that if you're not careful, you could date your own family is beyond me. So once I came back and I had this feeling, and my mum never told me, she just never said anything. She let me carry on. And I just had this issue about men, especially in South London. I don't know what it was. Scared me. And one day, out of the blue, my mum said, I've got something to tell you. Now, remember, I'm married now. The good thing, the guy that I married was a St. Lucian, so there couldn't be no connection to a Jamaican. I think that was what her saying was. And the story goes, met this man, this is his name, he's your father. That was just it. She told me to sit down, told me over the phone. I went ballistic. Didn't speak to my mum for nearly 5 years. She tried to reach out to me, talk to me. Couldn't speak to her. 5 years, I cut my family off. Cut them off. The hurt was so deep. It was so deep-rooted. Abandonment. It was my uncle who took care of me in Jamaica that pieced us back together eventually. I'm trying not to cry here, but they pieced us back together. And we've been a family, we brought the whole family back together. Love my mum to bits. And, being a mother myself, and I see how things are, I guess she did what her mother told her, which is my grandma, what to do. She kept quiet for years about so many different things. My mum is living with so much ghosts. It's unbelievable. The things that my dad's family did to man, and she kept quiet. And this is why I know that I've got my mum's trait, because I kept quiet. I keep quiet about the things, the atrocity that people do to me or say to me or bully me. And so my exterior outside is like, yeah, everything's great. But the things that people have done and said, and I don't retaliate. Because the way I see it is, I haven't done anything wrong. I may have said something that's triggered your conscience. And all I can do is stand in my truth. Friends have made me check myself. Friends have made me look at myself. Friends and partners have stripped my confidence. Made me clam up. I never forget when I spent 10 months in a hospital on my deathbed, and a doctor came in and said, how do you manage to live on survival mode? And I said, what are you talking about? He said, if you don't start talking, the things that is in your body is going to manifest and it will kill you, because it's a total emotional stress. And it will come out. Right now, it's not, man, it's showing itself. But one way it will come out as a clinical depression. It will come out as anxiety. It will come out as a panic attack. But it will. True to form, 10 years later, that's exactly what happened. Standing in my truth is just a word. But I stand by it, because if I didn't stand by it, I don't know where I'd be. I've been dying to stand in my truth for so long that I feel parts of me live a lie. I feel that I try to please other people. But this is not a confession. This is International Women's Day. And I am here, and Mother's Day, to say the challenges that we as Black women especially, or women, doesn't have to be black, but women who have lived in families that hide secrets, that have had their grandparents that hide secrets, and their mothers have held, and you are still carrying that stigmatization in. It is a cycle that has to be broken one day. I'm not saying I have broken it, but I know that I've at least cracked the surface. I have cousins who I don't speak to because I watched their disgracefulness, how they bullied my grandmother. I've had cousins that spew my grandmother's sister was so jealous of my grandmother because she had a big house, and my aunt, who was just the most lying, disgusting woman known to creation. And I don't care if my cousins don't ever talk to me again, if they ever listen to this, because it's going in the book. Disgusting woman. And I do not say rest your soul in peace. I hope that she is burning in hell right now. This is a woman who had a husband upstairs. She had these 2 children. Actually, she had 4 kids. And she had a couple in Jamaica, and she had, those in England. And she told her 2 children, the 2 youngest at the time, because my grandmother gave her a room in the house to live. They had nowhere to live. Imagine sharing a house with a massive house. So they lived upstairs and we lived downstairs in Dalston, and because we lived in Hornsey first, then my grandparents moved away because I lived across the road from my mum. Could you believe it? My mum lived at number 24. My grandmother lived at number 36. Told you, mixed up, proper mixed up life. Anyway, right? And turned round and she had nowhere to live. So my grandmother agreed that her sister would come and live in the house with her upstairs. This woman, and then we had another lodger, because I'm telling you, we had a massive house. So we were on the middle floor. We had another basement where one of her church elders, Mr. King, lived, and my grandmother upstairs, my aunt upstairs, or grand-aunt. And she had her husband, lovely man, who was dying of cancer. I didn't even know what cancer was, but he was dying. And I used to have to come home from school. Remember, she's got 2 kids and another daughter. Bigger daughter, my age daughter, but there was 2 younger kids. And I used to have to come home from school every day and go upstairs into this room or the floor that they lived on. It was always, this is probably why I don't like the colour red. And that's probably why I don't like Arsenal or Liverpool or any team that wear red per se. I'm not sure, it could be. I only started wearing red in lockdown. Right? I know I'm sounding crazy. But I literally had to go up into this room and it was covered in red. And I'm sure there was skulls and bloody garlic hanging. There was garlic hanging in the... Oh, it was horrible. Oh, my Jesus Christ. It just felt like... And that's another reason why I probably don't like horror movies. But I was young. How old was I? Probably 8 years old. And I had to go into this room and sit with this man. Beautiful man. Beautiful man, as my heart could remember. And I sat every day and I read the whole book of Psalms. Every day was a Psalms. So I started from Psalms 1 all the way down to the point that I memorized it. And every day I came home from school, 4 o'clock, I used to go up to Mr. Bennett and read. And read to this man. And, he died. And again, I don't remember much because I was a child. But that part I always remember. Going into this place, upstairs onto this floor. It was like climbing up and you could hear the floors creaking. And it was like it was like a whole different world walking up them steps onto the second floor of this house. And it just was eerie and smelt. And it was horrible. And this man got put into a hospice eventually and he died. But in that time, I think my aunt or my grandaunt liked the man that was downstairs in the basement, who was a friend of my mother's. And she used to throw vitriol at my grandmother. Remember, she is a Christian, this woman that died. Well, she used to go to, I don't know, she used to go to these Pocomanian raphead churches that used to make these really weird noises and Pocomanian talk. As far as I'm concerned, you are chanting the devil. I don't care. In your Pocomanian shit, it was devil chat. That is just not God's language. What the hell? Your voodoo shit, right? Your mumbo jumbo, not in it, not having it. I used to hate when my grandmother said, let's go and visit her church. I was like, nah. But I was too young. I couldn't turn around and say no. I used to turn around, and I remember used to shitting myself and leaving there shaking with the fear of God in me. It was horrible. Awful, awful, awful. I'm not saying that the people there were awful. My great-grandmother, my great-aunt, whatever she was just horrible. She was the walking devil on earth as far as I'm concerned. She got her children at the top of the stairs to spit on my grandmother. And I was defenseless. I couldn't do anything about it. I had to stand. It's not like at the age of 9, I couldn't go, oh my God. But I do remember I jumped in between. They stood like in the middle of a flight of 13 steps, and we're at the bottom of these steps, and they're leaning over the banister and they're spitting on her. And I remember standing in front of my grandmother like, how can I protect this batch of spit coming down on the woman that I love? She's my mom. How dare they? I've never faced off to those two imbecilic morons. I think when I spoke to the daughter, who's now grown, who talks to my mum on a regular basis, and I have to say, and I didn't know this until when my mum was hospitalised in 2018, Christmas, and I'm at the hospital, with my mum, and the phone rings, and she's going, oh, hello, blah, blah, Norma, how are you? And I'm looking at my mum mortified, like, what? And I put the phone, and then she puts the phone to me, and I go, oh, hello. And I'm like, I'm looking at my mum, and for the sake of my mother, I'm trying to be civil. And I remember putting down that phone and going, did you just let me speak to that mother effer? Did you really? Because what I wanted to say to her, let me come and find you so I can drop kick your ass. I don't care how old this all happened. I've never come looking for you because you lot are just a bunch of incestuous bunch of shit. But I couldn't. I had to hold all that anger in. Yeah, I'm carrying that emotional pain. International Women's Day, Mother's Day. Don't let it all be sweetness and light. There is a lot of crap behind us loving ourselves as women and the things that we go through. I love my mom. I love my grandmother. I miss my grandmother, especially in lockdown. She died just before we went into lockdown. I'm lying, she did 2017. God knows how she would have survived it, but they're in Jamaica, they seem to be fine. And a year later, I lost my my granddad, who, even though it's not blood, he's my granddad. The two people that believed in me are gone. Now, I'm not saying that my mother doesn't believe in me. My mother loves me to bits. And it pisses off my sister because my sister's always there for my mum. And I'm always there for my mum. But my mum sees us too differently. And she would always laud praises towards me. And sometimes I wonder, is that her guilty conscience? I don't know. I know she loves me and, she tries and blah, blah, blah. And I love her and I try. And sometimes I hug her and I'll just lie my mum and I'll cry. And I cry and I cry. And when we finish crying, we just hug each other and I say, I love you. And when I talk to her on the phone, I go, I love you, mummy. And I become this 10-year-old girl again. Standing at the airport and I'm waving to you. You're telling me, see you in a few weeks. You're going on holiday. Only for 5 years later, I am then met at the airport, and the only thing you can say to me when I get to the airport is, oh, right, now that you're back, we've got you back, don't forget to call me, you don't call me, because I never called my mum. I used to call her Desmond or Violet, and my dad was Shirley. Oh, don't forget to call your dad, and don't forget to make sure you call me mum. Could you imagine? I was told. This is how I had to because I didn't grow up with them. But here I am, a grown woman, child of my own, no stories left unturned. I've told my daughter everything. It's the best thing that ever could have happened because after having my daughter, I was told I can't have any more children. So God blessed me with one child to make a difference. And I'm trying to make that difference with my daughter. I'm trying to make sure that I don't hide anything and she doesn't feel like she can't come and talk to me about anything. The power of resilience. I challenged myself. So today, I challenge myself to stand in my truth and actually tell parts of my story to the world. International Women's Day. And for Mother's Day on the 14th of March, 2021, for whoever reads or listens to this in years to come. This is Valerie M, aka Maxfield, standing in my truth, deeply standing in my truth. And I want to say a big, big positive affirmations to the Creator of women, the Creator Father God, and for the men that have donated those wonderful sperms to make the women of this world that are achieving greatness, whether in politics, whether in science, whether in government, whether in schools, whether it be in, anywhere, cleaners, shops. Today's your day. I challenge you as I challenge me. Standing in my truth. Have a great day.